Welcome back to another quiet journey through time. Tonight you'll step into a medieval kitchen in the heart of Midwinter, where warmth is rare and precious, and every ember holds a memory. Let your eyes grow heavy as we wander through soft light, simple tasks, and the gentle hush of days long past. This is a story not meant to teach, but to soothe, to offer you a place to rest. So settle in, breathe slow, and let the strange warmth of a medieval kitchen carry you through the night. You wake before the sun, wrapped in the stale smell of straw and sweat. Your breath puffs out in little white clouds, curling in the half-light like ghosts not quite ready to leave. The blanket is slipped from your shoulders again, and the cold creeps into the crooks of your elbows and the bend of your knees. You draw it tighter, but it doesn't do much, just a worn wool thing, scratchy and thin. The cold lives in the stones beneath you, in the air you breathe, in your very bones. Still, you rise. Your bare feet find the rushes on the floor damp from yesterday's boots, and the leak in the roof, and you wince a little. The morning is so quiet it aches. Only the soft tick of the wind fingering the shutters and the occasional creak from the old beams above. Somewhere far away, a rooster calls out into the dark, as if to remind the sky that it's time to begin again. You tiptoe past the sleeping forms of others, cousin curled against the wall, a younger brother snoring softly. A cat nestled near the hearth, where the fire died long before midnight. There is a rhythm to this early hour, a hush that feels sacred, as though the world is holding its breath before the day truly begins. In the hall, you dress with hurried fingers, pulling on garments stiff with cold. The linen clings to your skin like ice, and the wool tunic smells faintly of smoke and onions. You wrap your shawl around your shoulders, knotting it tight, then lift the latch and step into the cold that bites like a blade. The wind greets your cheeks first, ruddying them in seconds. The world outside is washed in a silver-blue haze. Frost clings to the edges of everything: stones, thatch, wooden carts. Even the trees seem to shiver, their bare limbs rattling softly in the breeze. You make your way toward the kitchen, a squat, stained building off to the side of the manor, its chimney already whispering smoke into the pale sky. The path is slick with frozen mud, and your breath rattles in your chest. But then comes the scent. The first hint of warmth is not felt, but smelled. A thin ribbon of comfort curling through the air, wood smoke, burning fat, and something sweet, spiced apples maybe, or mulled cider. It tugs at you like a hand on your sleeve. You quicken your steps. Inside, it is dim but alive. The door groans open, and the heat swells against your face. You pause for a moment just inside the threshold, letting the warmth move through you. It is not fierce or overwhelming, it is a gentle, persistent thing. It's the kind of warmth that nestles deep and does not demand anything. It's the kind that lets your shoulders fall, lets your breath deepen. The kitchen is already awake. A servant you know only by name is stirring a pot, her sleeves rolled high, and her cheeks pink from the heat. Another is splitting kindling by the hearth, sending tiny sparks up the blackened stones. A boy crouches nearby, blowing carefully on the embers, coaxing them to glow. The fire does not roar her, it murmurs, steady low conversation that never quite stops. You take your place near the hearth, not too close, but close enough. The stones radiate a sleepy heat, and the air smells of wood and stew and iron. Above you, dried herbs hang from the rafter: sage, thyme, rosemary, giving the room a faint, earthy perfume. And the walls are dark with soot, but they feel familiar, like the inside of a coat you've worn 1,000 times. Safe worn in. Someone passes you a hunk of bread, still warm from the oven, rough-crusted and soft within, and you cradle it in your hands like it's something holy. You don't eat yet, not quite. First you just hold it, feel the steam press into your palms, let it thaw the stiff bend of your fingers. You breathe it in, yesty, comforting, simple. You sip from a wooden cup filled with something warm and spiced. It tastes like cloves and apples and the faintest trace of honey. The heat slips down your throat and settles low in your belly. Sit on the edge of a bench, your knees drawn up, your hands curled around the cup like it might anchor you to the present moment. There's a kind of magic in this room, but not the kind told in tales. No witches, no charms. Just fire and food and human hands. the kind of magic that comes from survival. From knowing that even in the coldest part of the year, someone will rise early to light the hearth. Someone will stir the pot. Someone will pass the bread. The fire pops suddenly, spitting a little ember onto the stones, and the warmth deepens. You glance at the other's faces, sleepy but calm, movements slow and sure. No one speaks much. There's no need. You are warm now, not just in body, but in spirit. The warmth is not just heat tits belonging. It's the steadiness of repetition, the kindness of shared labor, the comfort of knowing this will happen again tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. You lean your head back against the stone wall and close your eyes. The kitchen breathes around you, soft, warm, alive. You stay by the hearth longer than you need to, as do the others. No one hurries from warmth in midwinter. The day can wait, so can the chores, the errands, the shouting of masters, or the braying of animals. For now, there is only the kitchen. Only the soft hiss of the bubbling pot and the quiet creak of benches as bodies shift their weight. You sit straighter and reach for a wooden spoon left on the table broad. Darkened with age, polished by hundreds of hands before yours. Its bowl is worn shallow, the edge smoothed down by countless stirs of porridge, stew, and soup. You can feel the life inside it, somehow etched into the grain of the wood. Into the thin hairline cracks that spider out from the handle. You imagine the others who held it before you. A grandmother who stirred lentils with one hand, while a baby slept in the crook of her arm. A scullion boy who forgot it in a pot and got cuffed on the ear. A kitchen maid who stirred and sang long after the others had gone to sleep. The table it rests on is no less ancient. Long and low, the wood swollen in some places, warped in others. Burn marks, nicks, and cuts cross its surface like a battlefield of accidents and years. A great knot at the center looks like a sleeping eye. It wobbles slightly at one end, where a leg was replaced with a shorter one years ago, but no one minds. It is not a table for feasting or ceremony. It is a table for doing, for cleaning turnips and snapping beans, for shelling peas and kneading dough, for elbows, for laughter, for silence. You run your fingers along its surface and feel the roughness, the oil of centuries. It's strange how much a table can know, and stranger still how a table can make you feel known. As if by sitting there, by touching the same place as others have touched, you are folded into their memory. It's not remembered by name, perhaps, but remembered by presence. You are here. That matters. A girl sits down beside you, her cheeks ruddy from the fire, her hands chapped raw from yesterday's scrubbing. She places a wooden bowl between you and opens a cloth-wrapped bundle, a few onions, their skins still clinging, and a handful of tired leeks. Without a word, you help her peel. The dry skins crackle like paper, floating down onto the table, catching in the knots. Your fingers go numb quickly, but you work slowly, methodically. This is not a task that can be rushed. The onions are stubborn, and the fire is far away. As you peel, the familiar sting of onion scent seeps into your skin. It will stay there all day, tucked beneath your fingernails and caught in your sleeves. The smell of effort, of soup yet to be made. There's something comforting in it. The kitchen smells this way all winter long, smoke and onions and the faint, distant sweetness of parsnip or carrot, if you're lucky. Someone coughs from the corner, a harsh bark of a sound. Another mutters about the wood being green again. You don't look up. You're deep in the rhythm of peeling now, the small motions that anchor a person. The room hums with small labors. The creak of the butter churn, the dull thump of the cook's knife against the cutting board, the rasp of a grater over dried cheese. It is not quiet, not really, but it is calm. There's a pot already simmering over the fire. You can hear it shift and bubble, the occasional bubble rising like a sigh. The cook leans over it, squinting through the steam, and mutters something about not enough marrow. Still, she adds a bit of dried herb from the bundle above, and the scent changes. It deepens. It rounds out. You don't know what it. It is some leaf that smells green even in winter, but you are grateful for it. The table is covered now in scrap speels, roots. A few stray drops of broth, and someone comes by with a damp cloth to sweep it clean. They don't bother removing the stains. The wood is long past saving. It is stained with years. You lift your hands so they can wipe beneath your wrists, then go back to working. The girl beside you finally speaks. She asks if you think it will snow tonight. You shrug maybe. The air has that weight to it, the kind that presses against your eardrums and settles in your joints. It feels like something is coming, though you can't say what. She nods. She feels it too. When you finally stand to stretch, your knees ache and your back is stiff, but your hands are warm from the labor. You rinse them in a basin of water so cold it burns, then dry them on the hem of your tunic. The fire has grown just a little, and the kitchen breathes a little easier now. More people have arrived, shaking snow from their cloaks, stamping their boots at the threshold. The heat welcomes them in slow, steady, and sure. You take your place again by the table. Someone passes you a boiled egg and a crust of yesterday's bread. You eat it in small bites, letting the heat of the yolk soften the stale crust, letting each bite remind you that food is a miracle in midwinter. Not the kind of miracle that comes with trumpets and saints, but the quiet kind. The kind that appears when people work together around a wooden table with a spoon that's seen too many winters to count. And you think maybe that's what warmth really is. Not just the fire, not just the stew, but the work of many hands and the patience of old wood. And the comfort of sitting shoulder to shoulder with someone else who is trying to keep the cold out of their bones. In the stillness that follows, you lean your elbows on the table and let your forehead rest in your palms. The heat seeps into you again, gentle and constant, like a story being whispered from the grain of the wood. And for a little while longer, you let yourself listen. You hear them before you see them, the soft clang of the ash bucket, the slow drag of boots across the packed dirt floor. The fire tenders have arrived. They always come early, but not as early as you, and never in a rush. Their steps carry the rhythm of old routine, the kind passed from one backbent generation to the next. You look up from your seat near the table, and there they are, two of them this morning, moving with the deliberate care of those who understand that fire is both servant and beast. The elder of the two nods in your direction. His beard is peppered with white and smoke, and his hands are blackened at the knuckles, not unless he must. The younger one is new to the work. You think maybe 14 winters, or 15? He keeps glancing at the hearth, as though it might suddenly leap out at him. But still, he carries the wood, one log at a time, arms wrapped tightly around the bundle, his breath rising in soft clouds. You watch them work because there is a calm in it, something quiet and necessary. The elder stokes the embers first, crouching low and brushing away yesterday's ash with a practiced hand. His fingers, ungloved and calloused, find the glowing heart beneath the black. He coaxes it, gently adding a twist of straw here, a breath there, his lips pursed like a man about to whistle, but never quite letting the sound escape. Slowly, the red deepens, spreads, finds life again. The younger lad fumbles with the kindling. He drops a stick, then two, and the clatter rings too loud in the hushed room. The elder doesn't scold. He just nods toward the hearth, and the boy tries again, this time more carefully. The wood is dry someone saw to the tand when it catches. It does so with a shy little crackle. The fire begins to speak again. You can feel the change before you see it, the warmth crawling out across the stones, pushing back the chill that pools in the corners of the room. It's not sudden. It's more like a tide, soft, rising, quiet. A few people move closer to the hearth. The dog stretches out its paws and rolls onto its side, belly toward the growing heat. The cook mutters her approval and lifts the pot back into place, its iron belly already kissed with soot. Fire in winter is not a luxury. It is breath. It is blood. Without it, nothing moves. Without it, the butter stays stone, the broth never warms, and fingers stiffen into useless claws. The tenders know this. They treat the fire not as a tool, but as a guest. You must feed it, shelter it, listen to it. You must not demand too much, nor ignore it too long. The elder takes a poker now long, row-tiered, worn smooth at the handle, and stirs the logs just enough to let the flames breathe. They leap higher, golden and steady, and light begins to chase away the shadows from the rafters. The smell shifts to no longer just smoke and onion, but something richer, fuller, tinged with sap and heat and the faintest trace of the pine wood they've just added. The younger fire tender stands now, watching the flame as though it's telling a story. His face is flushed, not with embarrassment this time, but with pride. The fire lives because he helped it. Remember what that feels like? The first time the hearth bloomed under your hands, like magic, like waking up the sun. Someone brings over a basket of logs, the rough ends knocking together as they set it down beside the hearth. You reach for one more to feel it than to use it. The bark is cold and rough, dotted with sap beads that have frozen into golden teardrops. The log smells like the forest it came from, damp earth, old moss, and wind. Yeah. You think of the woodsmen who cut it, their axes swinging under gray skies, and the long journey the log has made to end here, glowing from within. The tenders settle now, their work done for the moment. The elder leans back against the stone wall, his hands resting on his knees. The boy sits cross-legged near the hearth, eyes still trained on the flames. The fire no longer needs their coaxing, it speaks for itself now, dancing in soft licks around the logs, casting shadows that sway gently across the floor. You find yourself drawn closer to, not just for the heat, though it pulls at your toes and soothes the sting in your fingers, but for the presence of it. Fire in winter is a gathering place, brings people near, melts silence into stories, softens the lines between strangers. You sit near the hearth, arms wrapped around your knees, and let the warmth seep into your skin, your muscles, your thoughts. A pot of broth begins to simmer again, its scent weaving through the air like a lullaby. Someone laughs softly just one sand. It ripples through the room like a pebble dropped into still water. The fire pops. Sparks rise and disappear before they reach the rafters. You remember other winters, other fires, some small shivering ones in damp corners of barns, others bright and wild, built too large and gone too fast. But this one, this quiet, steady fire is different. It asks for nothing except care. It gives not just warmth but rhythm, a reason to pause, a place to stay. Outside, the frost remains. The sky has not yet fully lightened, and the wind still scours the fields. But in here, the fire holds the cold at bay. It makes space for stillness, for breath, for beginning. You close your eyes and listen, not for voices or movement, but for the fire itself. The rustle of logs settling, the crack of sap bursting, the low whisper of heat rising. A language older than words, older than the stones themselves. And in that sound, you find a kind of peace. Not loud, not grand, just enough. The fire is fully awake now, its voice a steady murmur in the bones of the kitchen. You sit beside it, arms drawn around your knees, watching as the air begins to shimmer above the hearth. The pot hanging on the iron hook sways ever so slightly, its contents stirred by the slow dance of boiling. There is a new scent in the air now, rich and deep, layered and strange, a smell that speaks of hunger and satisfaction at once. It begins subtly, almost like damp earth, and then unfurls. Marrow. Parsnip, a hint of dried thyme, the sweetness of carrot reduced into something dark and fragrant. There might be a bone in there, too cracked open so that the marrow leaches into the broth. You can smell the fat beginning to rise and shimmer on the surface, forming tiny golden islands that catch the morning light when the lid is lifted. Hunger moves through you, not as pain, but as memory. You've been hungrier than this. You've known the hollow days between bad harvests, the brittle ache of cold without bread. But this hunger is gentler. It is tethered to promise. There is food, and it is near. And in that closeness, even before you eat, there is comfort. You watch the cook move slowly around the hearth, lifting the lid with a practiced hand, leaning in with her eyes half-lidded, as if tasting the smell itself. She does not measure, she does not write. The recipe lives in her palms, her nose, the soft pinch of her fingers. She adds a sprig of something green and brittle, and the broth shifts again. You catch the new note sharp, almost lemony, and your mouth waters before you've swallowed a single bite. She hums to herself, a sound that rises and falls in time with her movements. It's not a song, really, but more a habit. A way to keep time. The kitchen leans into that sound. The air feels thicker now, the heat deeper. You feel it in the creases of your elbows, the back of your neck, the soles of your feet. Not just on the skin, but under it. Someone at the long table begins slicing bread. The crust is rough and dark, the crumb inside tinged slightly gray from the rye. It is yesterday's bread, but it was well baked, and it will soften in the stew. The knife makes a sound like snow being stepped on soft, then crunching, then soft again. The slices are not even. Some are too thick, some too thin. No one minds. The girl with the onions returns with a bundle of green stuffed winter kale, limp and slightly spotted, but still green. She washes them quickly in a basin of cold water, her hands red and raw from earlier work. When she lifts them to the light, droplets fall like tiny stars. The greens go into the pot without ceremony, and the stew sighs as it accepts them. You move to help again, and the cook allows it. She passes you a wooden ladle and gestures toward the pot. "Stir slowly," she says. "Let it breathe." You lean in, steam rushing over your cheeks, warming the tip of your nose. You stir in slow circles, feeling the spoon catch on chunks of turnip, skim over bones, kiss the sides of the iron pot. Each motion sends up new scents, and you close your eyes for a moment to let them wash through you. This is not feast food. It is not noble fare, not the kind that fills tables with silver and song. This is peasant food, servant food, survival food, but in its own quiet way, it is sacred. The stew is made not just of ingredients, but of effort, of fingers scrubbed raw, of boots soaked in snow, of hours spent hauling wood and scraping knives. It is made of patience, of ordinary magic. You lift the spoon carefully to taste and blow across its surface. The heat tingles your lips before the flavor reaches your tongue. It is earthy, sweet, and a little bitter at the back. But it is warm, it is whole. It tastes like everything you've done to reach this moment. The cook nods, pleased, and lets you ladle out small bowls for the others. You do so slowly with care, letting the steam curl from each bowl like breath. When you pass one to the girl with the chapped hands, she offers a quiet thank you, her eyes lingering on the spoon before she eats. All around the kitchen, others gather with their bowls. They eat without rush, without words. Bread is dipped and held until it softens. Broth is sipped slowly. The warmth does not just live in the stew, it spreads from it through fingertips, across shoulders, into cheeks. Hunger recedes, not because it is gone, but because it is being answered. You find your own seat again on the bench by the wall, where you can feel the heat of the fire and the heartbeat of the room. Your bowl rests in your lap, and you eat in small, reverent bites. You do not speak. You do not need to. The silence is not empty. It is full of presence. It's a kind of quiet that can only grow in places where people are fed and warm and unhurried. When the last spoonful is gone, you scrape the bowl with a crust of bread and let the final taste linger. You do not wish for more. You do not need to be full. You need only to be warmed. You are. You lean back against the wall and let your eyes soften. The kitchen glows around you: fire, breath, spoon, steam. The scent of stew still hangs in the air, thick and golden, settling into the stones, the wool, the hair on the back of your neck. You are no longer hungry. But more than that, you are no longer cold. The warmth has settled now, just in the air, but in the rhythm of the day. The kitchen no longer feels like a refuge from cold. It has become its own small world, whole and humming. You stay seated by the hearth, your bowl scraped clean, your fingers still faintly tingling with the last traces of heat. The fire speaks in soft cracks and murmurs. The stewpot has gone quiet, its contents mostly served, save for a ladle or two left warming at the bottom. Across the room, the cook leans her elbow on the table and wipes her hands on her apron. The cloth is stiff from long use, its fibers darkened by ash and broth, its front mottled with the familiar pattern of a day's labor splatters from the stew, smudges from the firewood, a streak of something green that might be cabbage. She doesn't look at the mess. It's just how the apron lives now, and she with it. She sits back and exhales slowly, like someone who has been holding her breath since before dawn. Around her, others begin to clean, not hurriedly, but with the slow, practiced movements of those who have done it 100 times before. A boy gathers the empty bowls and stacks them near the basin. A girl wipes the table with a rag that used to be part of a shirt. No one is asked. They just know. When the stew is eaten, the cleaning begins. That is the way of things. Steam still lingers in the air, thin and ribboned, curling toward the rafters like the fading edge of a dream. You watch it drift upward and wonder, briefly, what stories it carries. You remember being small and asking your grandmother whether the steam from the pot was made of old breath weather. The ancestors came back in winter to warm their hands by the fire and speak. Through the bubbling of soup, she'd laughed and said, "Yes, of course." That's why the stew always tastes like memory. You can almost believe it now. The cook begins to speak, not loudly, not to anyone in particular. Just a story, floating like steam through the warm kitchen air. She talks about a cat that used to steal turnips from the bench when no one was looking, or maybe it was onions. The details change depending on her mood, but the shape of the tale remains the same. It's not the kind of story that needs to be true, it just needs to be told. You lean in slightly to hear better, and so do a few others. The girl with the chapped hand smiles behind her cup. The younger fire-tender tilts his head without stopping the gentle polishing of a soot-black kettle. Even the dog by the hearth lifts one ear. The story meanders, looping back on itself like a ribbon of smoke. There is no hurry. She tells it the way she stirs stews slowly, with pauses, letting the flavor rise. When she laughs, it is not sharp but soft, like the sound of cloth flapping on a line in spring wind. Her hands move while she talks, mending a tear in her sleeve with rough thread and a crooked needle. The stitch is imperfect, but strong, like the story. You find yourself smiling to not because the story is funny, exactly, but because it feels like something shared. A breath passed from one mouth to another. In this kitchen, in this season, stories are as important as firewood. They are what keeps the cold out, even after the stew is gone. Others begin to offer their own scraps of memory. The fire-tender tells of a chimney that once coughed a bird out into the flour bin. The boy washing bowls recalls the time the basin cracked from the cold and spilled dirty water all over the floor. Laughter grows, soft and crackling. Even those who don't speak listen closely, their faces warmed not just by firelight but by something deeper recognition. You don't speak yet, you just listen, the way the stories rise and fall, the way they loop through silence and return again, like stirring a pot that never empties. Passing a single candle between you and whispering tales you only half remembered. The darkness beyond the hearth made the stories feel larger, more true. Now, the warmth of the kitchen makes them feel smaller, but sweeter, intimate, like something stitched by hand. The table is nearly clean again, the floor swept, the pot scrubbed lightly, though some crust remains. No one has the heart to scrape it too hard just yet. A few bowls still sit near the hearth, drying in the heat. The air smells less of stew now, and more of wood and wet cloth and old iron, the scent of a kitchen that has done its work. You finally speak, offering a small tale of your own, something about a lost ladle, or a time the bread rose too much and spilled over the oven's edge. The details don't matter. What matters is the way the others turn toward you slightly, the way their eyes soften, the way the cook chuckles and nods. Your story becomes part of the steam now, part of the apron, part of the room. And when the talking fades again, as all stories must, there is a silence that is not empty. It is full of breath and heat and the invisible threads that hold a winter morning together. The cook stands and ties her apron tighter. Someone throws another log on the fire. A kettle is set down to warm, and the kitchen, still wrapped in ash and steam and soft voices, begins to ready itself for the next quiet miracle. Your feet find the floor again, bare now, your boots set aside to dry by the hearth. The rushes beneath you are fresh in some places, browned and soft in others, scattered with fragments of onion skins and flecks of ash. They shift slightly as you move, crackling, sighing, giving way. Beneath them, the stones are old and uneven, worn by centuries of footsteps, by spilled broth and dropped ladles, by kneeling, sweeping, dancing, kneading. This floor knows more about living than most people ever will. You stretch your toes into the woven stalks and let the texture wake your souls. It is not exactly comfortable, but it is grounding, this sensation of ancient stone warmed by fire, muffled just slightly by straw. You shift your weight, step lightly toward the basin to fetch more water, and you notice again how the stones change as you move. Some rise up in little humps. Others dip down like shallow bowls, worn into softness by the stubborn passage of time. This is not a clean floor, not in the way the word means now, but it is a tended floor, a known floor. Someone sweeps it every morning and again before the sun goes down. Someone stoops to gather the old rushes. Someone lays new ones scented faintly with mint or lavender when those herbs are in season. In summer, you remember the sharp sweetness of crushed thyme rising from your footsteps. In winter, there's little scent left but earth and old air. Still, it's something. A child toddles past, barefoot too, clutching a bit of crust in one sticky hand. She pauses near the hearth and looks down at the floor as though it might offer her direction. Then she plops down in the straw and begins to pull at it, inspecting each strand as though it holds a secret. You smile. You did the same at that age, sifting through the rushes to find tiny lost things. A bead, a button, a breadcrumb too hard to eat but curious to examine. Kitchens are not pristine places. They are soft with life. The floor holds the traces of everything dropped, spilled, stepped on, or forgotten. It holds the shape of shoes, the damp press of knees, the occasional bare footprint where someone like you has come close to the fire. There is a story in every smudge. You crouch down to scrub a bit of soot near the basin. Your hand presses against the stone, cool still in places where the fire's reach has not spread. You feel the hardness of it, the slight grain under your palm. Once these stones were quarried with great effort, hauled in carts, dragged by oxen, shaped and placed with aching backs and blistered palms. They were new then, sharp, proud. Now they are worn and humble, like all things that last long enough. Someone passes behind you carrying a stack of damp cloths. Another follows with a basket of carrots still speckled with soil. You rise again, and your feet shift to keep balance on the lopsided stones. It is always a dance here, moving without stumbling, navigating between warmth and water, between people and space. You learn it young. The floor teaches you. You take a moment to stand near the door, where the cold still pushes in around the edges, where the rushes grow thin and the stones are slick with condensation. The contrast is sharp. Your heel is warm, your toes already chilling. It reminds you of the world outside, where the frost still grips the grass and the sky hasn't warmed yet. You look down. There's a smear of mud by the threshold, someone's boot print left behind. You fetch a rag and stoop again to wipe it away, slowly, not because you must, but because it feels right, because the floor matters. It holds the weight of everything above it.
Ow.
Without the floor, there is no hearth, no pot, no table. Not just cold and earth and wind. When you return to your seat, you notice something new, a scorch mark, old and faded, just beneath the bench leg. You run your toe along it, wondering what happened. A falling coal? Spilled lantern? You make up a story for it. A late night, a distracted servant, a dropped ember caught in a bit of wool. You imagine someone's panic, someone else's scolding, the smell of singed straw. The mark remains. No one bothered to scrub it out fully. Some things are meant to stay, not as warnings necessarily, but as reminders. This kitchen, this warmth, this moment, they're layered over years of others. And the floor remembers. It remembers the thud of laughter, the clatter of dropped spoons, the sudden stillness when bad news arrived, the spill of cider, the hush of feet sneaking in too late, the tired shuffling of the sick, the stomp of boots after a hunt, the soft steps of someone in grief, the joyous dancing of a feast night, and the quiet pacing of those who couldn't sleep. It remembers your own feet too, small once unsteady, then quick, then heavier, now still, for this moment, listening. Someone tosses a fresh handful of rushes near the fire, and the scent rises faint, dry, a ghost of summer fields. You smile. You settle your heels into it, feeling the warm strands press against your skin. The floor creaks beneath you as if sighing in reply. And for a little while longer, you sit without moving, without speaking. The floor holds you. The fire warms you. The air, thick with quiet labor and the fragrance of lives lived closely, wraps around you like a second skin. It is enough. You press your palm gently against the cold glass of the kitchen window, watching the frost lace delicate patterns like spider webs across the surface. The thin ice catches the pale morning light, scattering it into a muted glow that seems to hold the quiet promise of the day ahead. Outside, the world is still and white, muffled under a heavy blanket of snow. But inside, the kitchen hums with a different kind of warmth, one that has nothing to do with fire or wool, and everything to do with being alive. The frost clings stubbornly to the window pane, a fragile, fleeting artwork crafted overnight and destined to melt by afternoon. You trace its edge with your finger, careful not to break the crystalline filigree. Your breath fogs the glass, blurring the patterns and making the world outside seem even more distant and dreamlike. For a moment you lose yourself in this soft, frozen lace, the quiet cold trapped between warmth and thaw. You know this frost is more than decoration. It is a reminder of the coldness that presses in from the outside, sharp and relentless. Of the small miracles that keep the kitchen from turning to ice. Of the fire crackling in the hearth, fed by careful hands and patient hearts. Of the stew simmering on the pot, its steam weaving slowly upward, filling the room with scents that warm your chest and remind you you are alive. Your fingers grow numb from the chill of the glass, but you do not pull away. The frost is a barrier and a window at once. It divides the frozen world beyond from the flickering warmth here, yet it also connects you, binding cold and heat, outside and inside, time passing and time preserved. The kitchen itself feels like that, a place caught between extremes, where survival is measured in moments like these. The dog stirs near the hearth, lifting his heavy head and stretching before curling back into his nest of straw and wool. The hens cluck softly beyond the door, scratching through the snow-dusted yard for scraps. The fire sends shadows dancing across the low beams above your head. You inhale the scent of smoke and old stone and the faint trace of last night's bread crust still tucked beneath the table. You press your forehead against the glass, your breath warm against the cold frost. Ow. You imagine the world beyond, fields buried under snowdrifts, the skeletal limbs of trees trembling in the icy wind. Distant hills blurred beneath gray skies. The frost on the window feels like a fragile veil between you and that vast white silence. And yet, here in this room, you feel a stubborn pulse. A warmth that isn't just fire or flesh, but something deeper, something that has carried people through centuries of winters. The kitchen breathes with it, the stones holding it, the wooden beams soaking it in like a sponge. It is the strange warmth of belonging, of being held safe in the midst of cold and storm. You step back from the window and turn toward the hearth, feeling the steady glow of embers and the gentle murmur of water boiling. The frost will melt soon. The day will march forward with its chores, its noise, its demands. But this moment, the fragile beauty of ice on glass, the quiet warmth inside will remain tucked in your memory like a secret. You gather your shawl closer around your shoulders and sit by the fire, letting the heat seep into your bones. Outside, the frost begins to soften, droplets forming along the edges of the patterns and sliding silently down the pane. The world is waking, the kitchen waits, and you wait with it. You lift the blackened kettle with both hands, feeling the iron's full burden as it tugs against your spine. It is heavier than it looks, and the water inside it sloshes like a stubborn tide, warm from the fire, yet heavy with resistance. You carry it slowly, step by careful step, your breath a quiet rhythm in the smoky hush of the kitchen. The floor is uneven beneath your boots, warped stone and packed earth remembering the weight of many feet before yours. The warmth of the hearth follows you only so far, and you step briefly into a shadow that seems colder than it ought to be. The table creaks as you set the kettle down. Its legs are thick with age, and one of them is propped with a chip of kindling to keep it from tilting too far. You wipe your hands on your apron. Not that it helps much. Your palms are always a little wet these days. It's always scented with ash, steam, and the faint temps of old lard. Your fingers are pink from the heat and raw from the cold, a contradiction your skin has learned not to complain about. Beside you, a child is peeling turnips with a knife too big for their hand. The blade slips once, and you pause without looking up. The child winces more from shame than pain and resumes with greater care. You say nothing, they learn by doing, just as you did. Words are wasted on some lessons, and this is one of them. You pour from the kettle into a pot, already lined with herbs, a handful of thyme tied with twine, a sprig of rosemary that's nearly dry, and some bruised garlic cloves split open with the heel of your hand. The water hisses slightly as it touches the metal, and steam rises in loose curls, smelling of the iron, the fire, and something almost clean. You add split peas next, then stir with a worn wooden spoon that's been shaved down to a nub by years of soup and stew. Outside, the wind sighs along the shutters. It does not rattle them. They're bound tight with leather straps for winter, but you hear its breath anyway. The world beyond the walls is sharp and indifferent, full of brittle twigs and fox tracks and forgotten shoes buried in the snow. But in here the kettle murmurs, and the stew begins its slow and forgiving journey toward softness. You sit for a moment, rubbing your knees through the wool of your skirts. The heat from the hearth doesn't quite reach this corner, but it tries. Your skin tingles where it thaws, and your bones speak in small creaks when you shift. The quiet is not true silence. There is the steady drip of melted ice from the eaves, the flap of a sparrow against the glassless window, the rustle of mice in the rushes underfoot, but it is peaceful in its own way, soft and rounded like a worn spoon. The child brings you a bowl with carrot peelings, and you nod. They've done better this time. You tip the scraps into the stock pot, watching them sink and bob. Waste not, want not. Everything gives its bit to the broth. From the ceiling beam hangs a bunch of dried apples, wrinkled and sun-brown, saved from autumn's blush. You pluck one down and break it in half, offering a piece to the child and taking the other for yourself. It's leathery but sweet, and it clings to your teeth in a way that reminds you of being 10 and hiding behind the bakery wall, waiting for a chance to snatch the ones they tossed out. A chicken clucks softly from the corner. She has no idea what month it is, nor does she care. She's warm enough, fed enough, and seems content to peck at the spilled grain from yesterday's measure. You envy her sometimes her simple satisfaction with what she has. But then the stew lets out a quiet bubble, and you remember there is something deeply satisfying in your own work too. The fire crackles and shifts as you add another log. The smoke swirls up the chimney in ribbons of gray, and you breathe in deeply, despite the grit. You've come to associate this smell with survival, with fullness, with a kind of primitive grace. The kettle, empty now, rests on its side on the hearthstone, its belly scorched and scarred. You'll scrub it again later, but it will never be clean, not truly. And yet every time it boils, it gives you something back: warmth, steam, nourishment, the illusion of control. You pick up the ladle, stir the stew, and close your eyes just for a moment. The scent is stronger, naups thickening, herbs unfurling, garlic mellowing. It is not a feast, not even close. But it is enough. And in the cold season, in a stone house with a draft beneath every door and a frost that paints your bed sheets, sometimes enough feels like the greatest gift of all. You crouch before the old brick oven as it exhales a tired breath, warm and dusty, scented with soot and something faintly sweet. Yesterday's bread, perhaps, or a forgotten apple left too close to the fire. The heat is soft now, not the roaring belly it was in the morning, but a mellow pulse that radiates gently into your hands as you press your palms against the stone ledge. You've always liked this part of the day, when the fire stops shouting and begins to murmur, when the light it casts no longer flickers frantically but glows like a lullaby. The oven is built into the wall, rounded and domed like an ancient cave, with soot-darkened bricks and a sootier heart. It takes most of the morning to bring it to full heat. First with kindling, then larger logs, coaxed and fed like a stubborn old mule. The wood gives off its cracking sighs, and the smell of sap and smoke clings to your hair, your sleeves, your breath. But now, as the flames have died down and the ash settles into soft gray hills, there is a silence to it, a kind of ancient stillness, a warmth that doesn't ask for anything in return. You lift the wooden peel and slide it slowly across the stone floor of the oven. It's empty now, but the motion feels comforting, like turning the pages of a book you've read many times. Sometimes the baker lets you help. Not often, and only when he's in good spirits. And on those days you feel something almost like pride, something small and bright in your chest. It's work, but it's also something older than you, older than the baker, older than the town itself. A rhythm, a memory passed down not in words, but in motion. You remember once watching your grandmother knead dough by this same oven, the flour flying like pale dust around her wrists, the lines on her face catching the morning light like cracks in old parchment. She'd hum tunelessly, sometimes whisper a prayer to saints, sometimes just speak to the dough as if it were a stubborn child. She never taught you with words, but your hands remember. Even now, years later, you can feel the ghost of her movements in your own fingers, as if the act itself were something sacred. Not baking, but conjuring warmth from flour and fire and time. Tonight, no bread remains, only the memory of what was. The oven is still warm, though, and you settle beside it, drawing your cloak tighter around your shoulders, letting the heat seep into your bones. Someone has tucked a basket of onions close to the bricks, letting them soften. And the smell is oddly sweet. Pungent, yes, but comforting too. Like the scent of lived-in rooms or the collar of a coat that always fits just right. A cat whose name you've never known, but who seems to know everyone, curls beside you, her fur rising and falling with quiet breath. She knows where the warmth is. She always has. Outside, the snow still falls, silent and unhurried. But in here, the world feels suspended. The oven hums faintly. The walls exhale their warmth. You think about time, how it moves slowly in kitchens like this, measured not in hours, but in rising dough and cooling ashes. No clocks tick here. Only the pulse of the oven, the hiss of a kettle, the stretch and collapse of bread. Sometimes you wonder what it would be like to sleep beside it. Not in a bed, not under blankets, but right here on the flagstone floor. Head resting against a sack of flour, feet outstretched toward the glowing mouth. It's not impossible. You've seen the younger scullions do it on cold nights, curled like kittens in the corners, their breath fogging the air even as their skin drank the heat. There's something ancient about it, this surrender to warmth, this closeness to fire, as if it recalls some distant time when all people huddled in caves and stared into flames, whispering stories and waiting for the stars to shift. You shift your weight and stretch your legs, feeling the ache in your knees, the quiet fatigue that settles in after a long day. There is nothing left to do tonight. The bread is eaten. The embers are dying. Tomorrow, it will begin again. The stoking, the kindling, the dough that must be mixed and risen and baked.
Ow.
But for now, for this brief window of stillness, you are simply here. A quiet soul beside a quiet oven, warmed by the breath of old bricks and older fire. A gust rattles the shutter, but you hardly notice. The cat blinks at you, stretches, and closes her eyes again. The world beyond this room could vanish into the snow, and you would not move. Not until the last heat has faded. Not until the oven breathes no more. You sit on the low stool again, the one with one leg shorter than the rest, wobbling just slightly every time you shift your weight. It's placed perfectly. Not too near the hearth to get scorched, not too far to miss the magic of it. The light flickers in long ribbons across the curved walls of the kitchen, catching on bundles of garlic, skeins of drying herbs, and the dull gleam of the old iron cauldron that always hangs, like a dark moon, over the fire. It has been there longer than anyone remembers. Maybe your grandmother stirred it. Maybe hers did too. Maybe it was always here, born of soot and time. You reach out now, slowly, to run your fingers along the outer rim. It's warm and rough, a bit sticky from whatever was last cooked inside it, though the scent is always the same. Onions softened in lard. Marrow and bone, salt and ash, and the sharp whisper of something green, something foraged. Something stubborn enough to grow even in the frost-bitten soil. The cauldron is heavier than it looks. When the men haul it down to scrub or fill, they do so with groaning backs and gritted teeth. But mostly it stays in its place, suspended on a thick black chain, creaking ever so slightly as it swings from side to side. You've often thought it looks like it breathes, or thinks, or remembers. Inside, tonight, is a thick soup the color of peat. You've watched it build all afternoon, layer by layer. First the bones and their chatter, then carrots dug from under frost, a bit of dried cabbage, a pinch of barley, dried herbs that crumble into dust between your fingers, a pinch of salt hoarded like treasure. Every so often someone lifts the lid and stirs, and each time the steam rises like a blessing, hot and herbal, scented with the long patience of winter cooking. You lean your chin into your hands and watch it sway. The light catches in the liquid when the ladle dips in. Tiny flecks like gold dust, though it's just fat and grit. Still in this room, in this moment, it feels like you're watching something sacred. You never realized how much warmth could come from watching something become. Behind you, the others talk. Low voices murmured gossip. The rustle of feet and cloth, the soft laughter of women remembering things they'll never tell you. Occasionally, someone leans in to sniff, to mutter their approval. The old woman with the bent back says it needs more salt. The younger one with the hair bound in a red ribbon adds a pinch of something secret when no one's looking. And you just watch. You don't need to speak. There's something ancient in the way the cauldron hangs there, heavy with hunger and hope, its belly full of ours. It's the kind of warmth you don't need to touch to feel. The logs in the hearth hiss and sigh, collapsing inward. You throw another on and watch the embers leap. The fire roars for a moment, dancing in the cauldron's curved side, and then settles back into its low crackle. Above it, the soup bubbles thickly, as though the pot itself is breathing through the steam. You remember times when there was nothing in it but water and turnip skin? You remember waiting for flavors to appear that never did? But tonight, it's different. There was meat, not much, but enough, and barley, and dried leek. Tonight the soup tastes like something that will last. A ladle is dipped in again. Someone fills a bowl and passes it across the room. The scent changes again, sharper now, closer. Someone hands you a piece of coarse bread still warm from the side of him, letting the steam kiss your fingertips and wait your turn for the soup. When it comes, it's too hot to eat at first. You hold the bowl close to your chest, cupping it like you would a kitten or a song. The steam fogs your lashes. You close your eyes, breathe it in. It smells of everything you didn't know you were waiting for. Around you, spoons scrape gently against clay bowls. No one speaks much anymore. The food has quieted them. The warmth has taken hold. The fire glows steadily, throwing long shadows that stretch toward the corners of the room. Where mice rustle and straw and dried apples hang like forgotten stars. You take your first spoonful, and it burns. Just a little, but you don't mind. You blow on the next. The taste is earthy, faintly sweet, with a depth that speaks of patience, of a dozen hands tending it in small ways over hours. There's something ancient about it. It's not just the pot, or the recipe, or the bones, but the act itself. This gathering, this sitting, this sharing of warmth, when there's so little to go around. You feel it in your belly, in your throat, and your bones. You think there will be cold again tomorrow. There will be ice on the bucket and wind in the thatch. Your fingers will go numb before you even leave the bed. But for now, here, with this heavy bowl, and this wobbling stool, and this quiet fire, you are full. You are warm. You are safe. And the cauldron still swings gently, just slightly above the hearth. Not yet empty, not yet still. You sit on the worn bench near the hearth, your knees drawn up close, and for once, the kitchen is quiet. The bread has risen and been baked. The stew simmers, needing no more stirring. The fire is fed and the kindling stacked, and no one has yet come to shout your name or ask for something they cannot find. It is that rarest of moments in a medieval kitchen silence, stillness, warmth that doesn't demand anything from you. Your hands are raw from scrubbing, and your feet ache from hours on the stone floor, but for now, all of that softens. The crackle of the fire is the only sound. The big black cauldron huffs and breathes gently, a thick curl of steam whispering upward. Every surface oak table, clay tiles, iron pot seems to exhale, as if the room itself is settling into a drowsy nap. There is no clock, no hourglass, nothing to tell you the time, but you know it by feel. It is the lull that comes after the midday meal and before the setting of the sun. A gentle in-between hour, not meant for doing, but for existing. You press your back against the uneven wall, warm from where heat seeps through the kitchen bricks, and you let your eyes drift closed. There's the faint smell of onions still in the air, of salt pork, of herbs now hanging limp after boiling. Somewhere in the back of the room, a single fly buzzes against a shuttered window. The dog, who has learned this rhythm too well, lies curled beneath the long table, twitching in a dream. You think of nothing at all. Or maybe you think of the way flour clings to your skin long after the kneading is done, or of how your breath looked in the air this morning, foggy and soft, or of the strange way the coals in the fire shift and sigh, like an old woman talking to herself. Sometimes you doze, just for a few minutes, head bent, arms crossed over your lap. You drift into the warmth like slipping beneath a heavy wool blanket. The world narrows to the dim orange glow behind your eyelids and the faint scent of smoke in your hair. You dream of something simple, warm bread, clean linens, your mother's voice. No one scolds you if they find you like this, not during this hush. Everyone knows it, the cooks, the maids, even the children. The silence between chores is sacred. It is not written down, but all obey it. There is no shouting, no rushing, no loud clatter of pots or boots, just the crackling fire and the quiet company of your own thoughts. When you finally rise again, your muscles protest. The warmth has seeped deep into your bones, made you soft, and stepping away feels like leaving a sanctuary. The chill meets you quickly, though not bitter, just enough to remind you of the difference. The spell breaks. The rhythm of the day begins again. You stoke the hearth gently. You check the pot. You wipe the table down with a cloth that smells faintly of lye. Someone will be back soon asking for more, always more. But for now, you carry the silence with you, like a hidden ember tucked beneath your ribs. It is not gone. It waits for you. And you will return to it again and again. In this kitchen that knows both labor and stillness, heat and hush in equal measure. The walls of the kitchen are not smooth. They're not even straight. They bow slightly, as if the house itself is breathing in and out in time with the turning seasons. The plaster is cracked in the corners and chipped near the floor, where many shoes, many brooms, many years have brushed against it. And if you press your hand against the wall-flat palm, fingers wide, you can feel its stories humming beneath the lime wash. This room has known centuries. It has outlived the people who built it, outlived the ones who shouted across it, who scrubbed it, who sang in it. You stand in the middle and look around, and the walls are thick enough to hold the weight of all the days that have passed through here, not in words, but in warmth. In soot, in the scent of baked apples that clings to the beams, even when there are no apples to be found. The stones at the base are cool and ancient. They come from a time when this land was forest, or perhaps battlefield. You cannot know. But you like to imagine that some of the stones still carry the deep quiet of trees, or the echo of distant thunder from hooves. These stones were not born to be part of a kitchen, but they serve it now, like you. Above, the wooden beams are dark with age and smoke, some of them marked with little gouges or iron nails that serve no clear purpose anymore. One beam has initials carved into it faint, just 2 letters and a crooked heart. You do not know who carved them or when, but you look at them sometimes while you stir the soup, and you feel less alone. There is a window in the far wall where the sunlight drips in golden puddles in late afternoon, illuminating the motes of flour and ash that float like soft ghosts through the air. The light lands differently each season. In winter, it is pale and slow. In summer, it slices through the room like a knife. In spring, it dapples everything your hands. The table, the dog curled near the door with a kind of gentle forgiveness. And in autumn, it's honey thick and low, brushing the corners like an old friend returned. You catch yourself watching it, some days instead of doing what you ought. Makes you feel something you cannot name. Not sadness, not joy, something quieter, a remembering. You know the places where the plaster is thin, and you can see the laths beneath, like ribs. You know where the mice like to run behind the pantry shelf. You know where the floor dips slightly, always collecting drips of water from the wash basin. The kitchen has quirks, like a person. And you have learned them all, just as the kitchen has learned you. It knows the sound of your steps, knows your way of humming when you're kneading dough. It holds the echoes of your laughter, your sighs, your soft curses when you burn your hand. It has heard your whispered prayers late at night when the wind howls and the fire goes low. If the kitchen had a voice, it would not need to speak. It would only hum in your direction, and you would understand. Others come and go, cooks change. Boys grow into men and leave for the town. Girls marry and take their aprons with them. But the kitchen endures, and you, for now, are part of its memory. When you lean against the doorframe at dusk, watching the smoke curl upward from the chimney, you feel just faintly that the house is leaning back into you. Maybe a century from now, someone else will stand where you are standing. Someone with different clothes, a different name, a different way of holding a spoon, but the walls will remember, not the details, not your face or your words, but the warmth of your hands, the weight of your feet, the hush of your silence in the middle of the afternoon. You press your hand to the wall again. You don't expect anything, but still, you feel it, the faint warmth, the stored sun, the memory of yesterday's fire. You close your eyes for a moment, and it feels like the wall is breathing. This is the oldest truth of a medieval kitchen. Nothing is ever really gone. The bread is eaten, the embers die, the children grow. But something stays, clings, settles into the stone and wood and plaster, into the grain of the table and the soot-blackened rafters. And so you go on, one moment after another, knowing that everything you do leaves a little imprint. Not a grand mark. It's not history. Just a faint warmth. Just a breath on the wall. It's just enough for the room to remember. You wake before the others, before the sun even stretches its fingers over the horizon. There is something ancient about these hours, still heavy, untouched. The kitchen is not warm yet, not truly. The fire has died in the night, reduced to a gray mound of ash and memory, like the last breath of a dream before waking. You kneel, not out of reverence, but out of rhythm, habit worn into you like the smoothing of stone by endless feet. Your hands know the way. You reach for the iron poker and begin to stir the ashes. The soft scrape of metal against stone fills the air like a whisper to no one. It is the sound of 1,000 mornings before this one, and it will be the sound of 1,000 more. Beneath the pale drift of gray, you find the faintest glimmer of orange, coal, stubborn and loyal. You cradle it with dried moss and curls of bark, coaxing it to remember its warmth, urging it gently back to life. Your breath is slow and measured. You blow, you wait. You blow again. A flicker, then a tiny flame, shivering like a newborn foal. The light glows on your face. The heat hasn't reached your fingers yet, but already you feel a small thawing in your chest, a sense of quiet triumph. The kitchen will live again today. You feed the fire little by little, as though not to frighten it. Wood from the pile beside the hearth, each piece cold, damp at the edges, whispering its own protest as it catches. But it catches. You sit back on your heels, brushing soot from your palms onto your apron. Your breath rises in faint clouds, the only proof that the world still holds its chill. The fire begins to crackle in earnest now, and the shadows along the wall pulled back slightly, retreating into the corners. The kitchen begins to change, just a little, not with noise or haste, but with possibility. You listen to the creak of beams overhead, the settling of pots, slow stirring of warmth through air that has forgotten how to be anything but cold. Soon, the others will come. The cook grumbling as she ties her apron. The boy who turns the spit. The girl who washes roots and peels turnips and sometimes hums when she thinks no one hears. But for now, you are alone in this space that belongs to the fire and the stone and the stories trapped in the cracks of the walls. Sit on the low stool and hold your hands near the hearth. The heat begins to seep in, not quickly, not all at once, but steadily, like something earning your trust. You look around. Everything is as it always is, and yet different in the half-light of early morning. The shelves heavy with crocks and clay jars, the wooden spoon resting like a relic beside the pot. The soot-darkened beams that hold up a ceiling that has seen everything. On the table, someone has left a cloth folded into a square, and beside it, a bit of dried rosemary tied with twine. You wonder who it was. Perhaps it was meant for the stew. Perhaps it was meant as a kindness. The heat reaches your toes now, wrapped in thick woolen socks that itch but protect. You flex them. The fire cracks, spitting softly like it has remembered a joke from long ago. You allow yourself a smile. Outside, the world is still gripped by frost, but in here, the thaw has begun. You can smell its smoke and damp stone, and the first curl of warmth that rises from burning pine. The smell is not pleasant exactly, but it is familiar, and that makes it dear. The pots will soon bubble. The bread will go into the oven. The chicken already plucked and pale waits under a cloth to be basted in trust, but not yet. For a few more minutes, this warmth belongs only to you. You cradle it like a secret, this hush before the clatter. You do not speak. You do not move more than you must. You let the heat gather around you like a shawl made of light. Time is slower here. Or maybe it stretches, like dough left to rise near the fire. The sun has not yet claimed the sky, but the edges of the window are beginning to blush. Soon, the shadows will lose their grip. Soon, footsteps will echo across the flagstones. Soon, the day will become a machine, creaking forward with the weight of duty. But for now, the kitchen is just a quiet room with a small fire and you. And that is enough. You rise, finally, stretching the stiffness from your back. The poker rests against the hearth, warm to the touch. You brush your apron again, though the soot will remain. It always does. The fire is strong now. It will not go out. You have done what was needed. The warmth is here, strange and earned, stubborn against the season. You turn toward the table, toward the day, toward the others who will come. But for one brief moment, you let yourself stand in the flickering silence. Wrapped in the glow of something older than you, older than even the stones beneath your feet. And you let it hold you. You notice it first not on her face, not in her hands, but on her apron, an ancient canvas of linen browned by years of toil. Embroidered not with thread but with stains, fat from last month's pig belly, a rust-colored streak from beetroot juice, a soot-smudged thumbprint that tells of ashes lifted and stirred. It hangs heavy around her, this apron. It's like a badge of some unsung knighthood, earned through burns and blisters and the never-ending performance of feeding others while feeding herself last. You are still half a shadow in the doorway, hesitant to cross into the sphere of her sovereignty. The kitchen is warmer than you remember, not from the hearth alone, but from her presence radiating steadiness and salt-worn strength. She does not turn to you right away. She knows you will come closer, knows that the magnetism of heat and scent and unspoken welcome will draw you in. You are no threat, no nobleman to be flattered, no steward to impress, just a soul seeking warmth. She moves like someone who's moved this way for decades. The stirring is rhythmic, absent of hurry. Pot is not boiling, it is murmuring, speaking in little bubbles that rise and pop with soft breath. Her hand, browned and broad, pauses only to reach for a pinch of thyme dried from last summer. Her eyes flicker to the window, but not to admire the view, only to check the snow line, as if it might tell her how many logs the fire will need before dusk. You sit, wordless, on the bench near the wall, where the shadows pool thickest. The bench creaks, as always, a song of age and timber joints swollen with generations of winter. She does not offer you a word, only ladles some of the thick barley-on root broth into a cracked bowl and sets it beside you. The spoon is warm even before it touches the soup, as if it too has known nothing but service. Steam spirals up, slow and lazy, and you watch it dance in the light. It smells of onions cooked to softness, of marrow-rich broth, of old garlic and fresher leeks. You take a sip. It is not remarkable, not novel, but it is steadying, deep, earthy. It fills more than your stomach. It makes your shoulders drop. Your hands curled from the cold, uncurl. The cook finally looks at you not with scrutiny, but with something close to indifference, softened by familiarity. You have been in this kitchen before, not today perhaps, not in this lifetime. But some echo of you has crouched here in seasons past, warming cold hands beside a basin of hot dishwater, or crumbling stale bread into a pot when meat was scarce. Kitchens are like that. They remember the people who needed them. Behind her, a pan sizzles with lard. She tosses in cubes of turnip and parsnip, not because she must, but because she always does. Habit as heritage. Her apron catches a new splash, small golden, blistering at the hem, and she does not flinch. Her apron tells the story of the week, the season, the shortages, and the small victories. Its hem is ragged. Its ties are mended with a mismatched piece of string. But it holds. You watch her feed the fire, not with urgency, but with a practiced touch, just enough wood to coax the flames higher, not so much they choke the chimney with smoke. She listens to the fire like someone listens to a child, alert to the nuances. The crackles that mean hunger, the sighs that mean satisfaction. You wonder how many winters she has cooked through, how many soups stirred without complaint, how many mouths fed before her own, how many children quieted with warm bread and hands wiped with her apron. And yet, in her silence, there is no resentment, only motion, only life moving forward through the stirring of pots and the turning of roots and the folding of pastry with cracked, salted fingers. The kitchen smells now of roasting and sweetening vegetables, of rising steam, of life slowly waking. You hear the hen scratch outside the door, clucking in complaint at the frost. A lad dips into milk in the corner pail, swishing it with a finger before running out to his chores. The cook does not look. She knows. She always knows. You think about the apron again, how its very texture seems thick with winters past. It is not washed often. What would be the point? It is scrubbed, yes, at the stone basin, but never truly clean. It is a relic of necessity, a shield of cloth between her and the 100 small burns of daily life. The cook hums something now tuneless, low, like the mutter of a kettle not yet boiling. It is not for you. It is not for anyone. It is the sound of breath shaped by a body that has found its rhythm. In this kitchen, in this strange warmth of medieval midwinter, you are not the center, and that is a comfort. You are allowed, simply, to be here. You set the empty bowl on the worn wooden table, which does not speak, but you think just perhaps she notices. And outside, the snow keeps falling. You know the rhythm of ladles, the gentle lift and tilt, the way broth slides down the curve of the wooden spoon with a soft hush, like a lullaby whispered only to the fire. You've watched your mother do it, and her mother too never rushed, never careless. Always the same practiced arc of hand and wrist, a language passed from one winter to the next. It is mid-afternoon now, though the sky outside has dimmed early, heavy with snow clouds. The kitchen, for all its flickering life, has slowed too. The morning's bustle has faded into a slow tide of waiting, of stews thickening and embers softening. You are sitting on the stool near the hearth, elbows on knees, ladle in hand, half dreaming in the scent of leeks, barley, and old sweet onions. A cauldron simmers beside you, its surface dimpled and quivering. Every so often you stir, not because it must be done, but because it's soothing to do it. Because the sound of the spoon tracing the edges of the pot feels like tracing a memory. Because there is something oddly intimate in this quiet caretaking of heat and hunger. The ladle itself is a smooth, dark wood, blackened on the edges from years of closeness to flame. You like the feel of it, how it still bears the thumb curve of the hand that shaped it. The ladle has always been there, it seems. You've never seen another like it. It creaks a little as you use it, and that creak is oddly reassuring. It's like the way the door sighs on its hinges or the rafters groan when the wind leans in too hard. Outside, someone is chopping kindling. The sharp rhythm carries through the stone walls in little stutters, like a heartbeat far away. Inside, the kitchen listens but does not change. It breathes in warmth, out silence. He chickens under the bench flutter their feathers, then settle again. The dog sighs from a spot under the table. You lift the ladle again, slow and even. You can hear the faint splash as it dips beneath the stew, the soft weight of turnip and grain slipping back into liquid. The scent rises stronger with each stir, savory and deep. A stew like this isn't hurried, it's coaxed into being, layered slowly. Meat browned in fat, flour dusted and stirred in carefully, onions weeping their sweetness until they vanish, stock ladled in a bit at a time. That word again, ladled, as if it must be done by hand, not poured or dumped or splashed. No, the stew must be ladled, measured, honored, tended. Your mother told you once that when her hands are sore, when the frost gets into her joints and the cold won't let go, she still stirs the pot, because it reminds her she's part of something older than pain. It's because in a kitchen like this, the act of stirring is prayer, and the ladle is her rosary. And you understand now in your own bones what she meant. This simple gesture would into soup is more than cooking. It is comfort without words. It is proof that time is passing, slowly and softly, and that someone is here to greet it. Your brother peeks in. He is red-nosed from outside, arms full of wood, his boots dusted in snow. You don't say anything. You just hold out the ladle. He comes over, cups his hands around yours for warmth, then takes a sip from the curved spoon as if it were a goblet. He nods. It needs salt, he says. But his smile means it's good. You set the ladle back into the pot. Let it rest along the rim. It leans a little to one side, like it's listening. You glance toward the window. The light is thin and blue now, folded over the fields in a hush, but the kitchen holds steady. The coals pulse in the grate. The stew hums beneath its breath. The ladle floats quietly, ready for the next hand. And you think, as you tuck a loose curl behind your ear, that there are entire conversations in the tilt of a spoon. That someone could learn the shape of your soul just by watching the way you stir a pot. That every winter, someone has stood in this same spot, trying not to let the soup boil over, listening to the fire think, and wondering what the snow sounds like as it falls. You don't know what tomorrow will bring. You rarely do. But you do know this. The ladle will be there by the hearth, worn and warm. And so will you, stirring, watching, remembering, becoming part of the kitchen's quiet ladled language. You press your palm against the side of the earthenware bowl where the bread dough sleeps beneath a woolen cloth. It is not hot, not cold, but warm in that steady, secret way that reminds you of resting against another person. The dough has been tucked in like a child, swaddled near the hearth, given the gift of stillness and time. It is rising slowly, gently, the yeast whispering its ancient breath into the flour, and all you must do is wait and watch the bowl swell like a belly full of dreams. The warmth in the kitchen today is not loud. It is not the roar of flames or the sizzle of dripping fat, but a deep, low hum. The kind of warmth that soaks into your socks and climbs the bone ladder of your legs until your shoulders loosen. You sit on the bench near the dough and stretch your feet toward the fire. A pot of cabbage soup sighs quietly beside the bread bowl, and the lid of it rattles now and then like a slow and sleepy heart. No one else is in the kitchen now. The morning rush is past. The scraping, the boiling, the bickering over spices, all has fallen into silence. The fire tends itself now, with a whisper and a flicker. The spoon has been left in the soup. A single sunbeam rests on the wooden floor, and even the chickens outside seem to have agreed to hush. You find yourself drawn to the bowl again. You lift the cloth and peek beneath. The dough has grown in its sleep, plumped and soft, with dimples and curves like the cheek of a baby. You press 2 fingers gently into its surface and feel the warm resistance. A bounce that says yes. I am ready. I have changed. You cover it again. Let it rise just a little more. Your thoughts wander in the quiet. You think of your grandmother's hands. Rough, scarred, strong, shaping loaves like these decades ago. Before your time, before your body even knew how to walk, you remember the way her knuckles would shine with flour, and how her wrists turned with a rhythm older than song. She never measured anything. She just knew. You wonder if you will ever know like that. A bird pecks the windowsill, then vanishes. The shadow of a cloud passes across the yard. Somewhere beyond the kitchen walls, someone is splitting logs, and the thud of axe into wood sounds like a heartbeat through the earth. But here in this room, it is still. It is slow. It is warm. You push the bench closer to the hearth and place your hands near the flames. The bread will need to be punched down soon, kneaded again, then shaped into rounds and slipped into the warm belly of the oven, that black-mouthed cave of fire. But not yet. Not now. Now is for softness. Now is for breathing. The bread is becoming something edible, yes, but also something sacred. A reminder that time, when treated with care, becomes nourishment. That warmth, when wrapped around the patient, yields life. Now waiting, when done beside a fire, can feel like prayer. The minutes drift like snow. You press your hand once more to the side of the bowl. Still warm, still rising. And so are you. You tilt your head upward and stare at the bundles. They sway ever so slightly, like sleeping bats clinging to the low beams of the kitchen ceiling. Thyme, sage, yarrow, and rosemary. Their stiff, curled leaves rustle faintly when the wind finds a crack in the shutters. It's a dry sound, almost like old paper being folded, or the whispered gossip of ghosts. These herbs no longer smell green. They smell ancient, cured like time itself. You've known them since they were soft and wet with rain, freshly gathered in baskets on warm summer mornings. Back then, they bent under your fingers, left their green stains on your palms, made the whole kitchen smell like meadows in crushed rain. Now, they are dry, brittle, transformed. Their work is not yet done, but their wild days are over. They wait to be crumbled, brewed, boiled, ground into salves, or tossed into stews to remind the living of summer in the cold months. Sometimes when you sit alone and the house is still, they seem to whisper. Not in words, not quite, but in the subtle way dried things speak. They shift when no one touches them. They drop tiny pieces of themselves to the floor like offerings. They hum with quiet memory. You reach up to touch one. A bunch of lavender, tied with twine and faintly dusted with the white blush of time. It crackles under your fingertips. You crush a sprig between your fingers and hold it to your nose. The scent is faint, but still there, like a song nearly forgotten. You wonder if anyone else remembers how strong it once was. This hanging garden overhead is not decorative. It is survival. These are your medicines, your flavor, your comfort in the months when nothing green grows. You have learned what each one does. How sage soothes the throat and the spirit, how mint cools the body and sharpens the mind. How elderflower soaked and steeped can chase a fever from a child's skin. The knowledge is old, passed through hands, not books. We're one link in the chain. There are rules, of course. You must never harvest after nightfall. You must never cut a plant with anger in your heart. You must thank each stem, each leaf. You must hang them in silence. These things matter even if you cannot explain why. Sometimes, in the deep of night, when the fire is low and the rafters creak, the bundles sway more than they should. You've heard them click softly against one another as though exchanging secrets. It's an eerie, private sound, but not frightening. More like a reminder. They are still with you, these plants, still watching over the kitchen. You think of the old women who taught you which root to boil, which flower to avoid. You remember the firm press of their fingers around your wrists when you got it wrong, and the way their voices dropped when they spoke of hemlock or belladonna. There's kindness in plants, but there is also danger. You carry both in your hands now. The dried bundles are not pretty, not really. They're crooked, uneven, some darkened with age, some nearly forgotten. Yet they feel like guardians. You'd feel naked without them. You've traveled to other kitchens, newer ones, cleaner ones, with no herbs at all, and felt something missing, like walking into a room with no roof. These dry bundles are the memory of summer, the promise of healing, the hush of knowledge stored in stems. A gust of wind rattles the shutters again. One of the time bundles trembles, then settles. You watch the dust float down. You listen to the faint ticking of the leaves. You sit beneath them, as beneath a forest canopy. Not green, not alive, but not quite dead either. Only changed. In a while, you'll cut some down. You'll need a bit of marjoram for the stew, maybe some dried nettle for the poultice, but not yet. For now, you let them dangle and murmur above your head, a brittle choir of memory. A dry orchestra playing the slow, fragrant tune of time. The stew is nearly gone. A bit of broth clings to the curve of the bowl, thick with root starch and the faint shimmer of fat. You cradle the bowl in your hands, the wood warm against your palms, worn smooth from years of use and scrubbing. It has held hundreds of meals, thousands perhaps, but never speaks of them. It only offers what it is given, quietly and without complaint. You lift your spoon and scrape along the grain. The sound is soft but sharp. A gentle shuck, 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 like a blade across leather, or the brushing of bark. It's a hungry sound, one born not of greed, but of reverence. A final gesture of thanks to a meal that warmed your belly, filled your chest, reminded you that you are still here, still part of this day. The broth is humble: cabbage, onion, carrot, and barley. Scrap of salt pork if you were lucky. Nothing extravagant, but it sits heavy and honest in your stomach, like the weight of a kind word on a bad day. You don't always get meat. Often it's just water and what grew in the garden, thickened with time and stirred with care. But even the plainest broth carries the memory of fire and effort and patience. A bowl of stew is never just a bowl of stew. You tilt the bowl to coax the last bit into reach. The spoon glides, gentle but persistent, along the curve of the wood. You feel the scrape in your hand, in your wrist. You hear it echo in the still kitchen, louder than it has any right to be. The quiet has a way of amplifying the smallest things. You think about how many others have heard this same sound, in other kitchens, in other winters, across centuries. It is a sound that links the hungry and the fed, the poor and the proud, the past and the now. The bowl is yours. You carved it yourself, years ago, from a green piece of alder. It cracked once in the heat of a long summer, but you mended it with care, binding it with pitch and linen, then rubbing it with beeswax until it sang under your hands. You don't think of it as broken. You think of it as repaired. Oh, resilient. Like you. The spoon, though, that belonged to your grandmother, it's crooked at the handle, worn thin near the tip, where years of scraping have reshaped its edge. You feel her hands in it when you eat. You remember the way she held it, not just for food, but for stirring medicine or tracing idle circles in a pot while she thought. Her spoon carried stories. Now it carries yours. A child once asked you why the sound of a spoon on a wooden bowl is different from a spoon in a metal pot. You smiled. You said metal is too quick. It rings like a bell and forgets. But wood holds the scrape. It remembers. It carries the echo. You look down. A few grains of barley cling to the side. You scrape them gently, not wanting to leave them behind. There is no shame in wanting every last bit. This is how you were taught. Waste nothing. Honor the food. Clean your bowl with your spoon and your tongue and your thanks. Hunger is not just emptiness. It's a kind of respect. You don't eat because you are greedy. You eat because you remember. The fire has burned low. The herbs above you sway. Somewhere outside, snow or wind begins to pick up again. But here in this moment, you are warm, and the spoon is in your hand, and the bowl is nearly empty. Not quite, but nearly. Enough to make you grateful. Enough to make you quiet. You tip the bowl and sip the last bit of broth. It's cooler now, but still good. Still flavored with thyme and onion and the memory of boiling. You close your eyes for a breath, just one, to feel the warmth settle in your chest. You place the spoon back in the bowl, rest them both on the table, and sit for a while, doing nothing but listening to the small sounds of a house that is full of use. The pop of cooling wood, the faint whistle through the shutters, the creak of your chair beneath you. There is no feast, there are no guests. There is only you, the bowl, the spoon, and the silence. But it is enough. Tonight, it is more than enough. The coals are low now, just a faint red-ringed pulse beneath the ash, like the last heartbeat of something once alive and breathing. The great warmth that filled the kitchen all day has grown quiet. It does not leave all at once, but gently, slowly, like a guest who doesn't wish to be noticed as they slip out the door. The light has faded too. What remains is soft and golden and sleepy, brushing against the worn stones and heavy wooden table with the gentleness of twilight. Shadows stretch long across the floor. The spoon rests in the pot, tilted slightly. The cloth-covered loaf has grown cold. The chairs are empty, yet not abandoned, just resting, just waiting, settling into the hush that wraps itself around the room. You sit still in the silence, listening not for sounds but for absences, the absence of chopping, of stirring, of footsteps, of voices raised in talk and laughter. The day has folded itself shut, and what is left is the afterglow, the memory of warmth, rather than the warmth itself. The fire has served you well. It has boiled the water, baked the bread, roasted the root vegetables you pulled from the earth with your own cold hands. It has dried damp cloaks and warmed aching feet. It has curled the dog into a perfect circle and kept the baby's cheeks rosy. Nice. It has done its part now. It sleeps. But even so, the warmth has not fully gone. It lingers in the stones, sunk deep into the hearth, breathing through the floor and rising like invisible smoke into the rafters. It clings to your clothing, your skin, the back of your neck, and your closed eyelids. It's not heat anymore, not really. It's something else. Remembrance, a comfort, or the soul of the fire, even after the flames are gone. You draw your shawl around your shoulders and rest your hand on the table, fingers brushing over the rough grain of the wood. You know every knot and groove. You've spilled things on this table, cried beside it, napped against it in the soft lull of afternoon. It has caught the warmth of the sun and the fire both and. Now, in this quiet hour, it radiates a final kindness. It's not warmth exactly. The wind whistles faintly against the shutters, but it cannot enter here. The kitchen holds its own stillness. It is not afraid of the night. It has weathered too many of them, centuries of them. It knows what to do. It waits, it breathes, it holds. And so do you. The candle flickers low, its wax puddling at the base. One last bowl needs washing. One last log could be set on the embers, but you don't move. There is something sacred in this pause, something that asks for stillness rather than motion, for quiet rather than completion. You obey it. You honor the fire, not by stoking it again, but by sitting beside it as it fades, by letting it go gently, without rush. You think of all the fires that came before, lit by hands now long returned to dust. Think of all the feet that walked across these stones, the breaths that warmed this air. The songs hummed as pots were scrubbed and cloths were folded. The warmth was never just flame. It was people. It was presence. It was repetition, love, and need. It was survival, swollen softness, and the strange poetry of staying alive through a cold winter's night. In the hearth, the coals are now just a quiet red, barely pulsing. You rise at last and place the fireboard gently across the opening, tucking the warmth in as though you were putting a child to bed. You whisper something perhaps to the fire, or to the kitchen, or to the night itself. A word of thanks, or of memory. Or maybe just the sound of breath in the dark. Then you turn, step lightly across the floor, and slip out of the kitchen. Behind you, the fire sleeps. But the warmth, that strange warmth born not only of flame, but of care and breath and days lived fully, it remains. It always does. And now the fire has dimmed and the pots are still. The warmth lingers faintly, like a dream pressed into stone. You have walked through another world tonight, one of quiet hands, steady breath, and flickering light. May your own night be as calm, your rest as deep, and your dreams as gentle as the shadows once cast on a cold kitchen wall. Sleep well, and thank you for being here.